Shalom friends, greetings from Jerusalem. We are now standing above the valley of Kidron where we will go today. In the distance over there you can see the Golden Gate. It's one of the most important gates biblically because it's a gate to the east. It's a gate through which the Messiah will enter. It's a gate important for Christians because it's a gate through which Jesus entered, and people started waving the palm trees, greeting him as the Messiah. And you can see the palm trees over here, so it's quite interesting. So this is the eastern gate through which also the prophet Ezekiel writes that the glory of God will enter to the millennial temple. We are standing here in this road next to the Church of Nations, and over there is the Garden of Gethsemane. So a very important place also of martyrdom of Christ. But we're gonna go down to the Kidron Valley, and you will able to see this ancient valley that separated the Temple Mount from the Mount of Olives. And we're gonna go and see some of the most ancient graves in Jerusalem. So let's go. On top over there you can see the Church of Mary Magdalene. It's a Russian Orthodox church. But we're going down. You can see how the Mount of Olives looks with the many Jewish graves. It's a quite interesting atmosphere right now because we're standing to this ancient graveyard of Jewish people. You hear the Muslim calls for prayer. You have the Golden Gate in the distance. It's a spectacular sight. Of course, the Jewish people want to be buried here because they believe that the Messiah will step down on this hill, and the moment he will step down, a massive resurrection will happen around the world. But the people that will be here, they will be the first ones to experience the resurrection and the presence of the Messiah. That's why it costs millions to be buried here. It's a very expensive place to be buried. Here you can see a very nice passage from the book of Samuel. King David used to pass this valley and he wrote, you know, the many psalms, and also the psalm about walking in the valley of death. Some say that the name, the Kidron name, comes from a combination of the word which means dark. So it can be understood as a dark valley, and it can get very dark here because you are like in the middle of two hills, and you are very low compared to the rest of Jerusalem. The beginning of this valley is also known as the Jehoshaphat Valley, where the prophet Yoel tells of a future judgment of nations. And it's interesting why they will be judged. They will be judged because the nations took Jerusalem from the Jewish people, and because they divided Jerusalem. So, you know, today the whole world is saying that Jerusalem needs to be divided between the Jewish people and the Arab people, but the Bible says that God will judge actually those that do that. Another story from the Kidron Valley: Absalom, he lost his life over here, as his hair got into a tree and he was hanged. So here you can see we're getting lower and lower. It's much warmer here than upstairs. It's a nice walk here because you don't have a lot of people actually going down here. It's not like a very big tourist attractions like the main tours of Israel, of Jerusalem. They don't concentrate on the Kidron Valley. People are taken to the Garden of Gethsemane, they are taken to the Western Wall and so on, but here it's not as popular. So here you can see the Absalom's pillar in the name. It's named after Absalom, but it's actually not from that time period, of course, it's much later. Nevertheless, it's a pretty old grave, tomb. It dates to the Second Temple period. So not quite as old as you would think by reading the name. And also you have the cave of Jehoshaphat here, another ancient tomb. It's also from the second time period. So look at this, this is quite big. You can see how monumental it is. Walk here, go around it so you can see it. Those are pretty old graves over here. So, you know, I can't go today to a synagogue because I'm unclean. I entered the graveyard. So, no synagogue today. You can read here about the story of Absalom, the story I was telling you about, how he got cut. Absalom had beautiful hair, and according to the Bible, his hair got tangled on a tree, and that's how he died.
What we see here is
That's so Absalom was, of course, the father of David, was of course the son of David, one of David's sons. He rebelled against his father. The son that became the next king was Solomon. So this is the Absalom pillar, but it's not connected to Absalom. It's much later. It's named after him. So this is where we are. Just the beginning of the valley, and we're gonna go deeper into the valley. This is the old city, the Temple Mount, and here you would have the Mount of Olives. Okay, so let's go. So we're walking in the valley of darkness, the Kidron Valley, the Valley of Judgment, the Yehoshaphat Valley. Here you can see some more really old graves. And this is the valley. Okay guys, so there are some of the oldest graves in Jerusalem from the times of the Israeli kings. Some of the caves go back to the second temple period, and some of them even to the first temple period. So see some of those openings in the caves. So now we're gonna go even deeper into the Kidron Valley, and then we're gonna end up at the bottom of the city of David, and from there we're gonna go up from the Kidron Valley up to the city of David, and we'll end up on the top of the eastern hill where David had his palace, and from there you will be able to see again the Temple Mount. So we're making like an aliyah. We'll make an aliyah. Now we're going down, but we'll make an aliyah, because aliyah means to go up. And today when Jewish people return from the diaspora, it's called an aliyah because they're making a return. And if you return to Jerusalem, you have to go up. No matter the road you take, Jerusalem is located on hills, and you have to go in an upward direction. So here you can see, this is the tombs of the son of Hazir. You can see in the distance over there the 3 openings. Okay, it's estimated that it is from the 2nd century BC. And the tomb is named after the sons of Hazir, and Hazir sons are known from the Bible as one of the 24 priestly families in Jerusalem, and we read about that in Nehemiah 10:21 and 1 Chronicles 24:15. Okay, so this is once again a look on the tombs of the sons of Hazir. This is how it looks. An amazing view. We're in the valley, in the valley of Kidron, walking where David walked, walking when Jesus walked. Right now, ancient stories happened here. The same hills, those buildings were not there. This is a Arab neighborhood called Silvan, and you can see that they throw out trash on the slopes of this hill. You'll see even more over there, but they throw out trash just into the valley. So, you know, in biblical times in the Kidron Valley you had sacrifices made to false gods, and also it was described as always a burning place, a Gehenna, a place that was very dark. So here you have some more information. It's a over here there's a grave of a rabbi, Colonimus, on the 16th century. It's an interesting story that this rabbi miraculously, it says, saved the Jewish community from a blood label planned by the Gentile neighbors. So this is the grave, this is the valley, the slope of the valley, and we're walking over here, enjoying the quiet. So it's a pity that they've trashed this place so much. It destroys the view, but it's as I said, it's a long tradition of which Bible writes that evil things were happening in the valley, that there was trash, there was dogs in the valley, sacrifices to false gods. And it represents in a way a spiritual place, the Gehenna, hell. So here is the corner of the Temple Mount. You can see how high how low we are. There's a person over there. You can see how small he is. So the Golden Gate would be there. In that direction would be the Hulda gates and the entrance from the south to the temple, and behind that there would be the western wall. So some of those homes are built on a foundation also on ancient graves from second and first temple periods. You can see the holes in the mountain. Those were graves, tombs. Those were tombs. So you see how much trash it's here. Again, you can see the panorama from here where we were. The tomb of the sons of Hazir. Again. So once again a view on the Arab neighborhood called Silvan, and you see all this trash again that is being thrown on the slopes just like that, and at the base of the houses you can see ancient tombs that are located over here. So a mixture of things. And this slope over here is already the eastern hill. It goes from the bottom till the Temple Mount. So this is where the city of David is located, right here. The first Jewish settlement started here. So we're gonna go up from the Kidron Valley to the city of David. So you see a sign, City of David, right here. And here again, the valley of trash, slope of trash. It's a pity. I don't know why they do that, why they throw out trash here. It's a problem. So this is where the Muslim. Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
This is where the Arab village starts, the Silvan. You can see We have been approached by a gentleman wanting to sell us necklaces. He has been to Warsaw, where I sometimes travel from, and it's always good to say that you're not Jewish when when you talk in this neighborhood, because you never know what will be the reaction. Here's a shop, supermarket. And before we go up, I will take you to one more place. You see the sign? Pool of Siloam. So at the bottom of the city of David, during the time of the King Hezekiah, as Jerusalem was about to be invaded by the Assyrian Empire, King Hezekiah created a new tunnel that would go from the Gihon Spring, starting at the top of the city of David in the mountain. He would dig a hole, a tunnel that would direct the water into the Pool of Siloam, which was protected by walls. So before that, the water was going through a earlier canal, the Canaanite canal, that Canaanite tunnel that went that directed the water towards the valley, the Kidron Valley, where the king's gardens were created. We read a few times in the Bible about the king's gardens, but Hezekiah didn't want the water to go out from the city. He wanted to keep the water for protection, because they knew they were gonna be besieged. So before the invasion, they had limited time, so they created this tunnel in the mountain, and you can today actually go through this this tunnel. And they found an inscription, an ancient inscription, that announced the meeting of the two teams from two sides, because they started digging from two sides so it would be quicker, and eventually they met in the middle. And that's where they found this this inscription. I'm sorry, it wasn't in the middle, it was towards the end of the tunnel, but anyways, you can walk this tunnel, you can feel the water of the Gihon Spring today, and you, oh, nice children, like the camera. So now we're gonna go to the Pool of Siloam. And you know, this pool was found pretty recently. I'll put the information in the video when exactly it was found, but it was found by accident. They were making a construction, a pipe broke, and they started fixing it, and they found ancient steps.
Now the water tunnel, okay?
So here you can see the steps to the Pool of Siloam, where the pool would be located. It was a large pool, because this is just a fraction of the pool. You know, you just see this southern, to the north it goes, and it would go way past this. This would be the bottom where the water would be located. So the tunnel continues. I mean, the pool continues in this direction, but they can't really excavate over there because it's a private property. But this was excavated. See the ancient stones. There's many stories from the Bible, from the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, that talk about this pool. So So quite interesting. And we're gonna go, I'll actually show you where the Hezekiah tunnel leads today. So very close to this pool. So here again you can see from this perspective how the pool looks, and it's huge, you know. Look at those people in the pool. There's a big body of water. Here you can see a picture showing you how the pool looked. Look at the size of it. This is where we are now, where the pool is. And from that pool there was an ancient road that led to the temple complex. Of course, today you have a representation of the Temple Mount as it is today, but this is a representation of how the road would go from the pool up to the temple. And they found this road. It's actually here, so we can walk the ancient stones. It is very recent discovery, you know, and you could go from two sides actually. So as seen in the picture. Okay. So this is there would be shops, you know, as you would go up. Quite amazing. Quite amazing. I just want to show you something very interesting. Since we are here, I can show you.
Banana. Oh, maybe this is it. Because it says there the pool.
So this is a smaller pool over here. This is where the Hezekiah tunnel ends. So you have even water here, because as you walk the tunnel, you walk through water. So you get out here. You start at the top of the city of David, and you get out here. So that's how it looks. But that wasn't the proper pool. I was in the Pool of Siloam proper. And the main pool, because the main pool was even further, and it was just excavated recently. So, excuse me. Let's go. So this is again showing you how the pool looked. As you see, it had to be walled off for protection. Hezekiah built a tunnel that would gather the water here, and this is how it looks today. Very amazing.
Oh, that's a shuttle there, right?
So every year they find something new in Israel, and what they found is really incredible, because it tells you that the biblical stories happened for real. I mean, before the Hezekiah tunnel was found, nobody believed from a secular world that it existed. It was just a fantasy, a story, you know, nobody believed in it. But then they start finding things that prove that it is true. So Israel is a problem for the secular world. I mean, it's a problem because it shows that the stories of the Bible are true, and the secular world has really problems with that. Because the Bible was supposed to be a fairy tale, right? According to the secular world. And what we find is that many information can be confirmed by archaeology. Amazing. Let's go. So now we're gonna climb up. It's a really steep climb to the city of David. So I did this walk sometimes in the summer, and oh man, it was tiring. You know, it's very steep. Usually people get a shuttle over here, a bus, waits for the group and it takes them up, but we are not taking the shuttle. We're walking in the proper way. But at least, you know, we have a nice weather today. It is about 20 degrees, so it's not too warm, but there is also a wind, keeps you cool. Okay guys, so here we are almost halfway through our way on the top of the city of David, and this is the road we walked. We're still walking it, and here beneath us is quite interesting because it's obviously a quarry where they took out the stones to build Jerusalem. But also they found ancient tombs. So there is a discussion, because on Mount Zion, the so-called Mount Zion, I believe we are now on Mount Zion, but there's another mountain which is called Mount Zion because of the mistake of the Crusaders, where they came, when they came to Israel, they started naming things, and they named one of the hills Mount Zion, which had nothing to do with the proper Mount Zion, the city of David, where we are now. And because of that, a tradition developed, and there is actually a grave of David located on this so-called Mount Zion. And you can see religious Jews going there because of this ancient tradition. And it's, you know, for Jewish people, tradition is very important. So once some very important rabbis started going there and praying there, it instantly became a very important place. So now you have people going there, and there is a sign that this is the grave of David. But if you think logically, David would never be buried there, because in the times of David there was no settlement on the so-called Mount Zion. The main settlement was here where we are. And because they found graves which you can see now here, it is more probable that King David was buried somewhere here or on Mount of Olives, which has a very strong tradition of burying the Jewish kings. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that in for information. And once again, this is the view. We were just at the bottom of the eastern hill where the Pool of Siloam is. Now we're going up to the city of David. So here you can clearly see this Arab neighborhood, the Sylvan. in the direction. The city of David is a mixture now. There are some Jewish people living in the city of David. They build modern houses, so you see flags, Jewish flags, but there are also some Arab people living here, so it's a mixture of population. And of course Jewish people are very interested in living here because it's their ancestry. This is where the the Israeli history started, and it's logical that they would like to continue this heritage, but the Arab people really do not want to sell their land to them. And actually, if an Arab person sells, he is persecuted, so it's not that easy to buy land here. So as you see, not a lot of people walk this street. As I told you, most people just take the bus. And I imagine it's not easy to live here. The road is very narrow. Imagine walking up this hill every day from work, for example, and to work, going down. It's not easy. So now we are very close to the city of David, the top of the city of David, because we are still always on the city of David. So here you can see, this is where the pool was. Yeah, this is where we walked in the beginning, the Kidron Valley, and we walked this red trail, and we are now here. So this was our journey.
זה ממש טוב.
So I will show you one more thing here. Since we are here, I'll show you something very interesting. This, what you see now, is called MILLENIAL. It's a structure, a pyramid-looking structure that is located here. You can see, and the columns over here remains of houses that were located here on the slope, and it is believed that on top of this structure called Milo, this is what archaeologists believe is the biblical Milo, was located the palace of David. So, you know, again, some people say that the temple was located here, right, in the city of David, which is, as I mentioned before, a very illogical theory, and archaeology disproves it all the time. But another proof here, you know, you have houses from the 8th century BC. So if a temple would stand here, you know, at that time the temple was still standing. What, the temple would stand on houses? It doesn't make any sense. It's just, and if you look at the size of the temple, it is much larger than this hill. We have the measurements in the Mishnah, which is 500 square cubit. So it doesn't fit here. It would go into the Mount of Olives if you wanted to put the temple on top of this. Besides, we found other things that are here from the same time, so it doesn't make any sense. And you know, even some say, oh, the temple was here because the Gihon spring is in the city of David, so it must be here. But no, you know, it also doesn't make sense because the Gihon spring is under this hill. So again, it would have to shoot up like a geyser, and would really have to go up to the temple if it was located on top of this, because the Gihon spring is way down. So, and they found actually ways, you know, they found the cisterns at the Temple Mount, they found the ancient aqueducts that led water from Hebron to the temple complex. So there is a way of getting water to the Temple Mount. Here the water went down, it went to the Pool of Siloam, where we just visited. Yes. Now we're going to the visitor center, where I will finish my video. We'll have a view on the valley again. We'll see Milo from the top. So again, this is my Milo, and on the top, Mount of Olives in the distance. We were down there, and now we're up here. So if we would walk down there, we will go to the Hezekiah tunnel. This is the beginning of the tunnel route. This is the entrance to the city of David. It's very beautiful here. Royal atmosphere. And I'm coming here just to go on this terrace to give you a full perspective of our journey today. It took us a while, so thank you for all of those that stayed with me till the end, because it was a long journey, and I don't know if you like videos like that are that long. I know that the span of attention is decreasing, especially in the younger generation, but to really experience Jerusalem, it needs to take some time. I mean, I wouldn't be able to talk about all of that if I didn't walk the trail. So this is the top. You see the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This would be the entrance to the temple from the south, where the Hulda gates are. They are actually, you can see them over there, the three arches. That would be one entrance to the temple. The other one would be where you have this structure sticking out. This would be the second passage. And here is the city of David, where we are now, on top of it. Below is the Kidron Valley, which I walked. And there, over there is the Pool of Siloam, where through the Hezekiah tunnel the water was directed. So thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you learned something new. Let me know if you like those long videos, if I should make them shorter or not. Let me know. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Like the video, because that helps me. And if you think that my work is helpful, you can support the channel through YouTube or through the Patreon, which is located. You can go to my main YouTube page and just click over there. So have a good day. I wish you a good day, and I will see you in the next episode. Shalom.
Jerusalem is centered around 3 valleys and mountains. The mountains are Mount Moriah, sometimes called the Eastern Mountain, the Western Mountain, sometimes called Mount Zion, and Mount of Olives. Out of these 3 mountains, Mount Moriah was chosen as the best location for building a city. Although the Western Mountain is much larger and less steep, Mount Moriah was chosen because it had one unique and necessary element for the city to survive in this dry climate: water. Water is priceless in the desert, and the Gihon life-giving stream, which ran from beneath Mount Moriah, was something very special. With a continually flowing source of water and protection in the form of hills, Mount Moriah was established as the best place for the first human settlements in this area. Besides the mountains, the valleys also surround the city, which are dry basins of rivers that may periodically turn into waterways during heavy rainfall. And so, to the east we have the Kidron Valley, in the middle is the Tyropean Valley, sometimes called the Central Valley, and lastly, to the west, the Hinnom Valley. When we look at the shape of all those 3 valleys, people who know Hebrew may have associations with the Hebrew letter Shin when they look at the shape. The story of Jerusalem in the Bible begins with Abram and Melchizedek. Abram met Melchizedek, king of Salem, after a military victory over the king of Eliam, mentioned in Genesis 14. During the excavations in the city of David, archaeologists found no walls from the period when Salem was a city. Salem is often interpreted as the city of peace, and therefore no walls were needed. Abraham returns to Salem later on in his life. In Genesis 22:2, we read,
And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of.
And then In Genesis 22:4-5, we read,
Then on the third day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you.
God says to Abraham that the sacrifice will happen on a mountain that will be shown to him. Abraham knew Salem because in Genesis 14, Abram met Melchizedek, who is the king of Salem. We also read that the place chosen by God was up on a mountain. Abraham had to look up to see it. In ancient times, places of worship were built on mountain tops. Above Salem was Mount Moriah, where the future Jewish temple will stand. We read that Abraham leaves his servants with a donkey, probably in the nearby city of Salem. After a long journey, the servants probably stayed in Salem and gave water to their donkey. The story ends with God providing a ram for the sacrifice, and Isaac's life is spared. We return to Mount Moriah in the Bible in the times of the Jewish conquest of the Holy Land. Jerusalem at this time is no longer Salem, but is referred to as Jebus, in which the Canaanite people live. The eastern hill was again chosen as the perfect place to settle because of the Gihon spring. Water on the desert is a true miracle and a source of life. The ancient people knew this well and built walls and huge towers stretching down the hill to protect the very source of the spring. On top of the city, the Jebusites built the citadel of Zion, supported by a brick pyramid. Today, we know this is true because huge stones have been found and bear witness to the massive tower that protected the spring. Even today, the Gihon spring is still gushing out water from beneath the rocks. This is one of the proofs showing where the city of David was located. Around the spring, foundations of buildings have been found that continued to function throughout David's reign and up to their destruction in 586 by the Babylonian Empire. The Canaanite Jerusalem had a holy site above outside the city walls. They worshipped in the area of the Temple Mount, which later became the holiest site for the Jews and the third most holy site for Muslims. After 7 years of reign in Hebron, King David takes up the challenge that will seal his name as Israel's most famous ruler in history. To do this, he must conquer Jebus city, which does not belong to the tribe of Israel. The problem is that many armies have already tried to capture this fortress, but the massive walls and the elevated location made the city seem invincible. David knew that traditional methods of fighting would not work miracles here. Many armies have tried, and yet they have not captured the fortress. How then David, with his small army, conquered the city? Perhaps the hint is in one of the words that the Bible uses. In the second book of Samuel 5:8, we read,
And David said on that day, Whosoever getteth up to the gutter, and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind, that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain.
The text key word is bat zinor, which appears only once in the entire Bible and means tunnel, canal, or pipe. When David sees the mighty walls, he knows that capturing the city will require a special tactic. Perhaps by getting information from his spies, David learns about a secret passage to the city leading through one of the water tunnels. Joab volunteers for this dangerous mission and decides to break into the city using one of the entries at the mountain's foot. Today, the same tunnels are used by millions of tourists visiting the city of David. The most famous is the so-called Hezekiah Tunnel, built in Hezekiah's reign. The biblical text shows that the tricky tactic was successful. Joab gets into the city and probably opens the gates to the city, resulting in a great victory for David. David builds a palace for himself in the place of the Zion fortress and an additional protective walls. Today, at the palace site on the so-called Milo, archaeologists have found fragments of columns from David times and the robust foundations of a large building. The palace was situated on a hill from where David could observe his subjects, including a woman named Bathsheba. After bringing the Ark of the Covenant, David wants to build a temple for God, but his warrior past disqualifies him, and building a house for God must wait for his son Solomon. However, the temple site is purchased from the Jebusite Araunah, where an altar to God is built. David conquered Jerusalem and made it the capital of all the tribes of Israel, but it was in the time of Solomon that Jerusalem acquired the status of a perfect city. Solomon's name comes from the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace and completeness. Most often, Bible scholars portray Solomon as the figure who built the temple for the God of Israel, but the temple is just a crown on the head of a mighty construction projects that show this legendary king's glory and wisdom. In Solomon's day, Jerusalem population and area doubled. During his reign, Solomon built the Forest of Lebanon, the Column Hall, the Throne Room, the Royal Palace, the Court, and of course, the legendary Temple. Here is a description of the magnificent throne of Solomon.
Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the best gold. The throne had 6 steps, and the top of the throne was round behind, and there were stays on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions stood beside the stays. And 12 lions stood there on the one side and on the other, upon the 6 steps. There was not the like made in any kingdom.
Unfortunately, after Solomon's death, the king Rehoboam did not step up to his father's legacy. Rehoboam almost instantly destroyed what his father had worked for in his lifetime. Rehoboam was unwise and started listening to friends of his youth rather than the advisors that Solomon left for his guidance. Rehoboam quickly taxed the northern tribes of Israel so heavily that they rebelled and separated themselves from Judah, choosing Jeroboam as their new king. The kingdom became divided into Israel and Judah, having their own kings, capitals, and worship centers. The capital of Judah, Jerusalem, gradually started to lose its significance internationally and had many kings that led the Jewish people into idolatry. Certainly, the downfall of Judah would be much quicker if not for the good kings that fought for the restoration of pure worship. One of such kings was Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz and the 13th king of Judah. He is considered a very righteous king in both the Book of Kings and the Book of Chronicles. Because of the limited space in the city of David, people started to settle outside the city walls. The population of Jerusalem grew, and people needed new space to build their homes. Quickly, new homes started to pop up on the western hill, especially after the destruction of the northern kingdom by Assyria. Refugees fled to live in Jerusalem. Hezekiah, understanding the need to protect the people from the danger of the invaders, builds a massive 7-meter wide wall around the new neighborhood. What is astonishing is that today you can see the uncovered parts of this wall in Jerusalem. Another important construction project by Hezekiah was the creation of the Pool of Siloam that provides water for the growing population of Jerusalem. The Pool of Siloam became very important in Jewish tradition and is also visible in the New Testament description of Jesus' ministry. In the Bible, we read a lot about the creation of this water reservoir. This project was possible thanks to the creation of a new water tunnel that would direct the water from the Gihon spring to the Pool of Siloam. As the Assyrian invasion was closing on Jerusalem, Hezekiah and his army generals decided that it is necessary to block the water coming out of the city of David. In 2 Chronicles, we read,
It was Hezekiah who stopped the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon, and directed them to the west side of the city of David.
The old Canaanite tunnel was blocked, and the water stopped flowing into the king's gardens. Hezekiah diverted the spring's water into a new underground tunnel that has been quarried into the heart of the mountain. Two groups of masons worked towards each other from both sides and met in the middle of the tunnel. The evidence of this ancient miracle of engineering was found inside the tunnel on the Siloam inscription. Today, you can see a copy of the inscription inside the ancient tunnel of Hezekiah. The new walls and tunnels enhanced Jerusalem protection, but it was not enough to stop Assyria. Assyria was not just another enemy of Judah. At the end of the 8th century, Assyria became the first true empire. Assyria inherited culture, science, and religion that developed in the Babylonian Empire, but improved on military art. They were a force that no one could resist. Assyria conquered Israel's northern kingdom, destroying its cities and deporting the 10 tribes of Israel to foreign lands. Now, this unstoppable force was heading towards Judah to complete the destruction of the Jewish kingdom. Living in the times of Hezekiah, the people of Jerusalem had to be terrified of the news that Assyria is heading towards Jerusalem. On their triumphal march, the army of Sanherib destroyed 46 fortified cities and approached the great city of Lachish. The brutality of the Assyrian army against the people of Lachish perhaps did reach the Jerusalem citizens. What would they hear? Nothing pleasant. Perhaps stories of mass murder, stories of cutting the limbs, noses, and ears of their captives, stories of people being skinned alive, beheaded, stretched on torture machines, and of people's mutilated bodies impaled on stakes. The fate of Lachish was very tragic indeed. King Sanherib is so proud of his demolition in Lachish that he orders a 12-meter-long relief describing all the horrors of the battle and putting it in his palace in Nineveh. We can only imagine the horror of the people of Jerusalem, who must have thought that they are next. The very event of the Jerusalem siege is well recorded in the Bible. The army of Assyria stands outside the Jerusalem walls, threatens Hezekiah, mocks the God of Israel, and warns the people of their painful death. Jerusalem army, its walls, are no match for the war machine that conquered cities like this. There seems no hope, and there is no place to escape. Hezekiah understands this well and turns to God as his last hope for survival. In 2 Kings chapter 19 we read,
It is true, Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste the nations and their lands, and have hurled their gods into the fire, for they were not gods, but only the work of human hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. But now, Lord our God, please, save us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, our God.
The Bible records that the God of Israel is not silent to Hezekiah's prayer and answers through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah.
And against whom have you raised your voice? Against the Holy One of Israel. Because of your raging against me, and because your complacency has come up to my ears, I will put my hook in your nose, and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way by which you came.
God answers Sanherib in those words. The next day the army of Sanherib was destroyed. He is forced to return to Nineveh, where he is murdered in the temple of the pagan god Nisroch. For many years, this biblical story was regarded as a fairy tale in the Bible. However, in 1830, archaeologists in Iraq found the so-called Sanherib's prism. On this hexagon prism, the same expedition recorded in the Bible could be read in the Akkadian language. Regarding the Sanherib's expedition to Judah, Sanherib records all the cities he conquered and demolished, but when he starts to describe the Jerusalem siege, we can see a sudden change of narrative. Instead of describing how he destroyed Jerusalem like the other cities in Judah, we read, Hezekiah himself, like a caged bird, I shut up in Jerusalem, his royal city. Of course, the proud leader did not write that his whole army got killed and he was forced to return, but at least he did not lie. He had to return. He did not conquer Jerusalem. In the Sanherib's prism, there is no explanation of why Jerusalem was not conquered, but the Bible says it was an angel sent by God. This is truly a remarkable story. Once again, the Bible proves to be a reliable source and a witness of God's sovereignty even over the most powerful people in the world. Sanherib, who thought he was the king of the world, who humiliated many nations and their deities, now faced a force that cannot be mocked. Just one angel of the Lord destroyed his magnificent army. Instead of seeking the truth, Sanherib turns back to his false gods and is murdered by his sons in a pagan temple. There is no Assyria today, but Israel is still a nation and the people of God.